Belafonte, and also Miriam Makeba, whom he later married. Belafonte was one of the people who helped him settle in the United States as a student. While in Harlem, in New York, Masegela composed and recorded many new songs, including the 1968 #1 hit, Raising of the Grass, which won him a Grammy for Best Contemporary Pop Performance, instrumental that same year. Masegela returned to South Africa in the 1990s and continued to produce music and perform extensive tours around the world. And whenever he returned to New York, he was always in America, many of us know. We went to see him. He was always here. This was home. Johannesburg was home. The world was home, really, for Hugh Masegela. And really want to thank and acknowledge all the people here that we have that knew him personally, but also helped groom the man that we are here to celebrate today. Masegela left behind a daughter, Pule, and a son, Selema. He is beloved by the world. He is a child of the world. Thank you so much. I want to begin by acknowledging the officials that we have in the room. We've got some big wigs, y'all. No lightweights up in here. But also just begin by acknowledging Mr. VOZA Rivers. I named you doctor, because why not? Great community leader, and just really a nurturer of so many talents in this Harlem community. But also Aunt Nziki, who helped organize this event as well. We've also got Dr. Brigalia Bam. She is chairperson of the Electoral Commission of South Africa, was President Mandela's appointee, and served under President Thabo Mbeki and President Jacob Zuma. Dr. Bam, welcome. We also have Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, former Deputy President of South Africa from 2005 to 2008, and now currently serves as the Undersecretary at the United Nations and Executive Director of UN Women. Thank you for doing that. Told you got some big wigs. To start off and kick off our celebration, I'd like to bring onto the stage Ms. Ndonkona Dlamini, a former cast member of Sarafina, joined by the South African Harlem Voices, also known as Sahabo, to perform the South African National Anthem.
May we all rise, please. Nkosi sikeleli Afrika, maluphakanyisa uphondo lwayo, izwa imithandazo yethu, Nkosi sikelela thina lusapho lwayo, murena buluka sitshaba sayesu, ufekiseni mthwali mathwele, usibuluke, usibuluke sitshaba sayesu, sitshaba South Africa, South Africa. Ediplofanonte, yeah. The song we're about to sing is about the freedom. It's called Freedom Day Song, okay? I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. And we are here to celebrate. So let's make sure that we celebrate, okay?
Remember the
We remember the sacrifices we all made for this land to come true. We celebrate defeat of racism. We know that it is not over yet. Why let's all celebrate Freedom Day. Wabona kutalo Mandela, wachikululeko. Siyoitola, manje uthi let us go forward with liberation. Wabona kutalo Mandela, wachikululeko. Manje uthi let us go forward with liberation. Wabona kutalo Mandela, wachikululeko. Siyoitola, manje uthi let us go forward with liberation. Wabona kutalo Siyoitola, manje uthi let us go forward with liberation.
That was Sahabo, South African Harlem Voices. I said this was going to be, it was not going to be a spectator sport. So I wanted to, many of you here when you go to South African events, you hear, I call it ukikiza. I want to teach us how to ululate. And we must all try and do it because we know that from you would never have a stiff celebration. So let's learn. This is very nice. I can hear you though. We're here to work. Thank you so much, Sahabo. Next up, as I said, we have the Honorable Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka to give us a few of her thoughts on Brahu.
Thank you very much. I was still warming up. I didn't think it would come so soon. But, Amandla! Amandla! Long live the people of South Africa, long live! Long live the people of Harlem, long live! Long live liberation movements, long live! My baby, Freedom Day, it has to be like this. I want to start by thanking the people of Harlem for the amazing love you have for South Africa. Yes. It's the kind of love that is unconditional. All we need to do in South Africa is just to be good human beings. so that we can deliver the promise that we share. Today we celebrate 24 years of liberation. It could never have happened without solidarity internationally, especially from people like you who gave it their all. We also thank the South Africans who still live in Harlem and everywhere in the world who are making it their mission to always hold up the flag up high. In the last 24 years, we have made progress. We now have education in South Africa accessible and available to every child in South Africa by law. To the extent that we are struggling with the oversupply of children who are graduating from high schools because we do not have enough universities. And we have now also made tertiary education free. So you can imagine how much of the of the number of young people who have graduated from university in the last 24 years, we do have many young people who are distinguishing themselves in South Africa, and we have therefore now have seen the middle class in South Africa that is probably the highest on the African continent. We have also seen access to basic services increase. Africa as a whole has about 25% access of clean and reliable energy. South Africa alone has 80% already of access to energy. We are around 90% of access to clean and running water. But we have a lot of other problems. Violence against women, corruption. We also have politics that almost went haywire. But I think we have a new dawn and we're getting it together. We also have challenges of employment, especially for young people. And like many other parts of the world that I see in my job, we are struggling to adapt fast enough to be in the digital age so that we can prepare our children for the jobs of the 21st century. So we have a lot of pressure to do this. We've also seen corrupt multinationals and international investors. Some of them we are now having to arrest and are on trial. Because where there's a corrupt local, there's usually a corrupt international. So that has been also quite disappointing, the white-collar crime. But in the context of corruption and some of the missteps that you've seen in South Africa, my biggest pride are South Africans who have been whistleblowers, defending the democracy with everything they have. Our journalists, our activists, our civil servants, and some of our politicians that have been willing to break the ranks with the trends and traditions that are exploiting the benefits that should go to poor people. So people are fighting back with everything we have. And that is why, with all the embarrassment, now our former president is on trial. It doesn't happen in many countries. That shows that our judiciary also works and is devoted to its work. So we are a democracy in working with the contradictions, with the dynamism, and with the challenges, with the ululation, with the exhilaration, and everything all in one. And we are hopeful that we'll be able to overcome the trials and tribulations that we still have. Many of us, myself especially, believe the the empowerment of women is one of the biggest events that has to happen in South Africa for South Africa to reach its destination. The achievement of youth and the improvement of our education system, which has not reached its peak, is one of the biggest challenges that we have. Doesn't this sound familiar? This is what every country that is a developing country has to do, but all of us are impatient to make it right where we are. And if any one of us gets it right, we create a community that must work together. People like Brahiu Masigela worked very hard to get us where we are. He was an epitome and a symbol of excellence in South Africa. He raised the bar and had no tolerance for mediocrity, and would call out mediocrity in the way he best knew how. And we thank him for the role he played in order to make sure that people of the world knew about our struggle and mobilized for support. This year, we lost Brahiu, and we lost another stalwart and icon, Winnie Mandela. Another stalwart who was not just married to an icon, but was an icon in her own right. She was the shoulder on whom giants rested and stood so that they could be seen. She was the one who kept the name of Nelson Mandela visible, alive in the darkest hour. She was the one who made sure, in many cases, when the regime was at its worst, at its most oppressive, and everybody went for cover, Winnie went charging forward. She actually made the regime look scared, which gave us courage. Because you say, no. If that mama can beat them, we're going to pick our stones too. So, as her daughter said at the funeral, as the children of Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela, they do not have a luxury to choose and to compare them. These are the parents of, both of them are their parents. And if we as society can have the capacity to understand that it is actually possible in a generation that you actually have two people who tower above everyone else, and both of them are in the same family. An amazingly unique story for us, South Africa, Africans, people of African descent everywhere, that we must always celebrate. And of course, this year is also the Mandela 100. We celebrate Mandela's centenary, and we're looking forward to one of the biggest celebrations, hopefully, that we're going to have here in Harlem, to go down memory lane. 100 is a long time, there's a long memory lane. And we also celebrate this year the 100 years of Albertina Sisulu, the wife of Walter Sisulu. So, as we mourn the loss of our stalwarts, we know in African tradition, they are ancestors. They are looking and watching over us. They are expecting us to raise the bar. And as we sit here, all we want to do to the best that we can is to make them proud, to be the best that we can be, in order to make sure that if one day we reunite with them, we will have a good report to present to them. Look at what I did, where you left me. So thanks, Harlem, for giving us an opportunity to have these moments of recounting these fantastic times that we have, but also acknowledging our challenges and the weaknesses that we have within and amongst us. Thank you.
Remember that name, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, representing all of us over at the United Nations, Executive Director of UN Women. So thank you again. Do you remember, where were you, June 1990? Do you remember? Where were you though? June 22nd, 1990. Because who was in town? Nelson and Winnie Mandela were in town. So thank you for reminding us. You know, when Winnie and, I shouldn't even call her Winnie. I have no right to call her Winnie. I'm way too young. Mama. Mom Winnie was in town and Harlem came out. I'm a daughter of Harlem. I'm a daughter of South Africa. I was very young when we moved to Harlem. My mother was a political activist, and we came and moved to Harlem. So in 1990, we all got off school and went to see Nelson and Mom Winnie Mandela. But we're here to celebrate Brahu. Many of you know and call him Brahu. Do you know why we call him Brahu? In South Africa, brother is Bra. Well, brother is Bra here too, right? Okay, so Brahu. Brahu was also, you know, I love the story about how he got one of his first trumpets. It was given to him by Louis Armstrong. Yeah. Father Huddleston, who is the jazz band that Brahu played with when he was young, met Louis Armstrong here in America. This was when Brahu was still in South Africa, and he told him about this young man who loves to play the trumpet. And Louis gifted Brahu with his trumpet. Beautiful story. We're all connected. The connections are everywhere. We seek them. I'd like to call up next Ms. Phumla Andy Makwabe, who is the political counselor for the South African United Nations Mission, to share her thoughts. Please welcome Phumla.
Thank you. Program Director, esteemed excellencies, distinguished guests, and compatriots, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to represent our permanent representative, Ambassador Jerry Matsila. He has another engagement and hoping maybe he can join us later. After my Executive Director for Women, Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka, has said her words, I think there's just few things to add. I don't have much to say. As we know that we gathered here today to celebrate the 27th April 1994, our freedom. The commemoration is celebrated not just within the borders of South Africa, but also globally. With our international friends and compatriots. The theme, as the Executive Director mentioned, is the year of Tata Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, towards the full realization of our freedom through radical social economic transformation, because it uniquely coincides with the 100th centenary of the life of Tata Nelson Mandela, as well as our own mother, our struggle icon, Mama Albertina Sisulu. Just to move further, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, the struggles and the loss of lives of our fallen heroes and heroines require us never to take for granted the freedom that we enjoy today. We cannot sit, we must continue to work together, remove all the obstacles, that will divide us. Let us forge a national identity that is built on mutual respect, tolerance, and acceptance. There are words that Tata Mandela said when he spoke at the commemoration of our first Freedom Day, when he said, and I quote, "We have learned over the first freedom, yet that there is no shortcut to making South Africa the country of our dreams. It demands that workers and employers work together to produce efficiently and complete and with the best in the world to achieve equity and to help create more jobs. It requires a hard work on the part of farmers, farm workers, to feed the nation and provide raw materials, even in the face of adversity. It requires hard work by students and teachers to build a literate, skilled land nation. It requires a great exertion by our sportsperson and artists to always offer the best for the country and its people. It demands all of us, wherever we are, to exercise our rights as citizens and do without infringing on the rights of others," unquote. Esteemed guests, just to add what Tata Mandela said the other day, in my very first encounter with him, it was in 2002. He visited Athens, Greece, while I was serving there. He gave me 3 principles. He said, "Now that you are a South African diplomat, I understand why I went to exile. It was because of you." I started smiling and I wanted to laugh. "This is not a joke. I did it for you. You will never stand there if I didn't stay for 27 years in prison." And then he continued, "I want to give you 3 principles," he said. 1, love the people of the world. That's the first principle. Keep that smile. Don't be proud. Be humble before the people. Principle number 2, submit to your supervisors, wherever they are, to the elderly, everybody that is senior. You have to respect those people because they've done something that you didn't even know that they did. So that is very important for you. Lastly, he said, don't forget the poor. Because if you forget the poor, you will miss the mark. You won't understand other people up until you are in their own shoes. So that is what I heard from him. Esteemed guests, I won't say much. Another encounter with Brahu Ramapulo Masakela. I was privileged to host him in Harare when I was serving there. He was invited to a birthday of another musician that is well known in Africa and I think abroad, Oliver Mtukudzi. I had mixed feelings to host him because sometimes when you are given that opportunity or that particular role by your principals, you don't know how you are going to deal with all the issues around. If you're going to stay with somebody for 5 hours, what am I going to discuss with him? Even if I am going to attend functions with him, do I really have something to say or to provide? That man is great. How am I going to deal with that? As we know that he was an activist in his music, and he contributed to the fight against ills of our system in South Africa. Even when liberation movements were banned in South Africa, he kept on sending messages throughout the world. While he was invited in this particular function, a very formal gathering, he looked at me, he said, "What type of a function is this? I thought I was invited in just an ordinary birthday celebration for Tuku, my friend. Why all these people are dressed so much formal? I am not a formal person. Look at what I'm wearing." I started saying, you are important to them. They have also to show that to you as our guest speaker for the evening, and also to the birthday of this icon, Mtukudzi. While we were seated there, he started telling me who he was. The very first table, there were only 6 people. It was him, 2 of us, a lady from South African Airways, myself, Mr. Mtukudzi and his spouse, and also the daughter. And then he said, "Do you know me?" I said, "Yes, I heard about you. I listened to your music. I was very much inspired by everything you've done. I never even think that I'll have an opportunity to meet you like this." He said, "That's why you have to listen to me carefully. I've done this also not for me. Yes, to me it was just a hobby. To me it was one thing that I wanted to do in life. And I wanted to do it till I die," he said. He's known as a pattern of Africa. And also in South Africa, you know, the South African jazz, a father. He's our father when it comes to the issues of jazz. He related his story talking about Harlem that I don't know, Broadway that I don't even know, Brooklyn, and all what he did in the US. Mentioning names of different people, I was inspired. And then he said to me, "Do you know why jazz and Batanga is in my system? It's because I don't understand why these people now, they say I must speak. I am a musician. How can I speak?" He started saying to me, "Okay, you are a diplomat, let's talk. Who are these people?" I said, "These people, starting from the ministers of Zimbabwe, different ministries, also musicians from the region, musicians that are also coming from South Africa." And understand that he was also accompanied by some of the South African musicians. And then he said, "How do I greet them? Can I say hi? Hi, you diplomats, hi, you ministers." I said, "You can say it your own way, but you have just to follow just the protocol." And then when I said to him, "Don't forget to say Captain of Industries," he said, "Wow, there are people like that, yeah." So to say this is just to confirm that he was very humble. He was not supposed to discuss issues like that with me. And also very respectful, and also respected by a lot of people. And his songs were trying to tell me how he wrote some of the lyrics, some of the things that he composed on his own, and then tried to put it together. And then he said, "But I was very naughty, you know that? Very naughty. I usually sleep late. I go to the studio the whole day, and then in the evening, I have to see where the gig is. And then he said again, he said, you know this gentleman called Mtukuzi, he was my mentor. And I believed him up until when Mtukuzi was replying as the birthday boy. He said, brother, you is my mentor. I said, I don't know who to believe. He touched millions, that's for sure. Musicians all over the world, beyond the borders of South Africa. And also, his legacy, it will stand forever. And he is such a very special person to all of us. Just to close, few things that I want us to remember again, as Executive Director Mama Phumzile Ngcuka said, we will never forget the contribution and the role played by Afro-American society, more especially in the USA. Your supportive role in the fight for our liberation will never be taken for granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for representing the South African ambassador. Many of you know that we are also celebrating 24 years of freedom, 27th of April, 1994. Millions of South Africans stood online for hours to be able to vote in the first ever democratic elections. We all recall, if you were in the United States, we remember those images of people, those long lines. Do you remember those images? And the dedication of people to our freedom. South Africa's freedom was the world's freedom, really. After South Africa, I believe it was only Namibia that was left. Correct me if I'm wrong. Namibia? No. Namibia was before. Okay, excuse me, I'll stand corrected. But also, you know, on that day, South Africans broke over 300 years of colonial rule, being ruled by a minority, white supremacist minority. South Africans said, no, no more, no thank you. And I think we need to just take a hand to just think about, I was going to just recommend a quick moment of silence for the bravery of ordinary South Africans to stand on those lines and say, no, no more. Thank you. Many stood for hours with no water. It was burning hot. But when you know, when you have a mission, you do the mission, you complete the mission. And back here in New York, I do want to celebrate our next performer, Mrs. Thuli Dumagute, who many of you may know from Lion King, but her career began way back in South Africa. She's a legendary actress and singer, and also was instrumental. She was a vocal coach for Sarafina. Many of you saw Sarafina. So I'd like to welcome to the stage an icon among us, Ms. Thuli Dumagute.
Sanibona. Sanibona. Siyabonga. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. You know when your heart is heavy, just found out that someone who actually motivated you to be who you are as a singer, a very disciplined, focused artist. Even though we know that at some point in our lives we are going to exit, there are things we just don't want to accept. There's a train that comes from Zambia, Zimbabwe. There's a train that comes from Malawi, Angola. This train is also coming from Mozambique, Lesotho, Botswana. This train is carrying young and old men. Every time I listen to these lyrics, I would put a woman. There's a mother that this husband just left behind. There's a woman that this young man who just got married left behind. There's a grandfather who believes, I don't have any land, I might as well go and work in the mines of Johannesburg, South Africa. Someone wants to sing with me out there. Deep, 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 deep underground. These men are working, sweating, digging, digging, digging. That mighty shiny rock. That shiny diamond. That shiny gold. Shiny platinum. It is those fathers, those grandfathers, those husbands, those young men. And before we recovered from that shock of Rahim, they were hitting him. Got it? We're hit again. When is it going to end? I said, even though we know it's going to happen, there's a part of us that does not want to accept it. She kept the fires burning. She was unbreakable. I was reflecting the other day, and I said, you know, when someone is here and you get the news every day, you consume, you suck it up, you forget what happened yesterday because there is a tomorrow. But when you reflect and look back and watch those videos, you say to yourself, she was meant to be a leader. She could not afford not to be the leader. And she fulfilled that promise. South Africa's freedom was fought by both men and women. Equally. That is why in our government, it's written in black and white. There will always be 50% women, 50% men. That made a decision for us. sesikhumbuza uWinnie Mandela isimdala bafana singikhumbuza ubaba uSisulu obesimdala bafana singikhumbuza ubaba uThanda Siyabonga.
Should leave us with just teach us that song. I need to remember that song. Can we all sing along so we can learn that song? Just straight a cappella. And then sifunde.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Papa basekhaya. Oh! Oh yeah. Ibambeni wewe, oh ibambeni, oh ibambeni, oh ibambeni, awisipam sana bafana sesinkhumbuza uWinnie Mandela awisipam sana bafana sesinkhumbuza uWinnie Mandela awibambeni 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 awisibamu sana bafana sesinkhumbuza uWinnie Mandela awisibamu sana bafana sesinkhumbuza uWinnie Mandela.
Hi, sis Bugilemo. Hi, we are up. We are awake. We are woke. Thank you so much, Mamtuli Dumagote, for uplifting our spirits like that. And I hope everyone remembers that. We should do a quiz at the end. Oh, next up, we have such a beloved stalwart of Harlem. Many of you remember Record Shack on 125th. Oh man, those were the days. Those are good days. For 36 years, we had the Record Shack on 125th, thanks to the mighty Mr. Skulu Shange, also Ambassador of Harlem, Ambassador of South Africa, I consider it. In the 90s, many of us, that was the meeting place. If you were South African, you would go to Record Shack because you know that the school would always take care of you. Thank you so much. And he's going to share a few words with us now. So please welcome, let's give him a warm Harlem round of applause. Welcome.
Amanda. Welcome to my village. This is where me and Hugh Masekela grazed around the Apollo Theater. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and our dignitaries, thank you very much for being part of our love. We build bridges among our brothers in the diaspora without reservations. It is an accomplishment to be able to bring two continents together. It is an accomplishment to bring two nations together. Our brothers in the diaspora and ourselves, we build bridges and we communicate. I thank you for bringing the South African Freedom Day to Harlem where it belongs. There is no better place than Harlem for this event. Harlem has given all. Personally, they supported me through and through. And it was not only for me, it was for all of us. We're the children of Africa. Whatever remunerations took place between me and the community, it came out of the love. I think it is important that we acknowledge the fact that the apartheid regime hid a lot of things from us. We didn't know that we had another African nation in the Americas. We had to find out for ourselves. It is important that we hold each other together. The world is against us. They are taking us piece by piece, brick by brick, through the food that we eat, through everything that we go through in life. Genocide, you can look outside the window and see what the police are doing to our children. You can look through your window and see the racism and the degeneracy of the government itself, treating people like they are not human. And apartheid was not only in South Africa, it's still in America. We must fight. We must fight this invisible enemy, the economical apartheid, whereupon our communities have been taken over by some other people who didn't care a damn about us. And now they call themselves Harlemanites. The rug is being wiggled under our feet. They're raising taxes, they're raising everything on us so that we can boogie. And where do we go? They say anywhere you can go. But there is one place which must all of us remember as a home of African people, is the continent of Africa. And never bite your tongue about it. You're just as an African as anybody else. And it is written down in the biggest books you can find. Some of them you may never get to them. That we are all African people. We are the children of the first God. and we are here to stay against all odds. Well, freedom is not enough. There is economical freedom which we are lacking a lot. And we need to acknowledge the fact that we still got a lot to do. And it seems in a quarter of a decade, we haven't done enough. But at the same time, we must move on and start rebuilding our country. It is important. For the generations to come, we can miss out on the economical level, because when you don't control your economy, you don't control much. And this is why we are in these positions that we are in. We have been dispossessed. We are a captured people, and we must take the shackles off at any cost. I love you all. Your hearts are stronger than a bull. To survive all what I have learned about what happened here, and that we are still here regardless. I'm going to take a little note on my brother, Hugh Masekela. Hugh Masekela was a giant in the music industry. He broke through the barriers of economical strangulation, and he made his name. A giant has fallen, and we acknowledge that. Hugh Masekela made some wonderful compositions which spoke directly on our struggle. And that's a phenomenon on its own. In America, he spoke of stimela. He spoke of grazing in the grass. Yes. And at home, he said, bring back Mandela. Yes. Bring him home to Soweto. And it happened. He did come out. And by the way, when Mandela went to jail, that was the time when I left South Africa also. And life in exile is no joke. And you look for a brother with a candle in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and it is hard. But Helen opened up her arms and said, welcome, welcome. Stay with us, marry with us, enjoy everything that we can. If we have cornbread, that's all what we have, we share it with you. And that's a phenomenon. Hugh Masekela did a lot of work. Sometimes actions speak better than words. He went to action. He put dignity to the African music. No one wanted to talk about African music. What is that? Boga Boga Africana. What is that? Hugh Masekela came and tore that up. Everybody began to respect our music. I used to go to King Carol. I don't know if there are any people who know King Carol here. And you will find in some banner somewhere in the back of the store something about some music from Africa. And you could see that there was nobody cared about it. And when Hugh Masekela came, he did his job. And we cannot forget our sister Miriam Makeba. We can never forget her. A shining star of Africa. Yes, she gave it all to the liberation. She fought with everything. She could have lived a good life, enjoyed the money that she was receiving. But what was paramount was the survival of the African race. And she did stand up, and who can say that a woman take a back seat anywhere? She's right up there. Because sometimes when man cannot move forward, the woman moves forward. When men die in the battlefield, she's the one who pick up the pieces and bury everybody. And there's a lot of courage and a lot of work. And we praise Miriam Makeba. They stood in the valley of death and chose freedom than to sell out. The love that we have for Africa cannot be overemphasized. It is a love that is an undying love. If you are an African and you have the blood running in your veins, you have to have love for Africa. All we need is the children of Africa to pull together. Yes. And the world will take a back seat. Away Indeed, we are very appreciative to have had Harlem. We are very appreciative that we have had Brooklyn and the rest of the communities that have caressed us. And that should go into the heart forever that we are one. Hugh Masekela, he was not an ordinary man. He was one of those special creations. Hugh Masekela didn't bite his tongue about nothing. He will tell you, no, I am not going that direction. Yes, this is correct. And Winnie was the same. No matter how big you are, no matter how strong or how popular you are, Winnie will cut you into half. Say, look, this is where the buck stops. You stop right here. If you are talking junk, we're not buying that. We know what we want. We want freedom. And that's exactly what it is. There are many other people I would like to touch on, but time constraint. We had one of our giant poets, Dr. Willie Hosisile. Willie Hosisile, he was no joke. He was no artist fool. Willie stood with giants like Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, the Langston Hughes, great brother. And we just lost him. And those are hard people to replace. And some of the musicians, composers, we cannot mention all, have stood up for the African culture. And we appreciate that, because when you want to send people to war, you have to encourage them with songs, and they will move forward instead of going backwards. As Dr. Herbert Dodger says, forward ever, backward never. I thank you very much for listening to what I had to say.
Thank you so much. I personally thank you. Harlem thanks you. We all thank you. Dada. Next up, I want us to think about the fact that South Africa's freedom is 24. What are we doing at 24? 24 is pretty young. It's a young democracy. We've done tremendous work in the 24 years that we've had. It is a beautiful place I visit home. I try to go home twice a year. It is one of the most magical places you will ever visit. I encourage everyone here to make that trip. But next up, we have a young woman who was an infant in South African freedom, when we got freedom in South Africa. Sibabalwe Mona, to tell us what freedom means to her. All she has known is this.
Morning. When I first came to New York 2 years ago, I was suddenly struck with the realization that my conception of freedom was changing. Here I was, a black foreigner, coming to the supposed land of the free, where they wanted to build a wall, ban immigrants, and double down on black incarceration rates. And that was very jarring for me. I thought, have I ever really been free anywhere? As an almost born free and a beneficiary of the growing middle class in South Africa, I grew up with the notion of universal freedom and human rights. As I got older, I began to realize that this was a tenuously held together facade. South Africa has made many strides in racial equality and representation in 24 years, but there's still a long ways to go in addressing economic, gender-based, and sexuality-based injustices that strip South Africans of their human rights and freedoms every day. Worse still is how all these factors intersect with race and economics, and so that in South Africa, freedom still has a skin color, still has a price tag, and a zip code. So, 24 years on from liberation, who is going to lead the movement towards freedom 2.0? The South African youth of every era has always been revolutionary, as has been demonstrated by the recent fallism movements that have disrupted the South African political sphere in recent years. But sometimes, as youth, we tend to be reactionary. But, as is tradition for a wise chief to advise the village, South African youth has always been led and guided by our elders who have taught us to be calm, to be peaceful, and that radicalism and fighting can take many forms beyond violence. Utatu Hugh Masekela was such a figure who represented being an elder to the South African community, at home and abroad. Hugh's legacy is extremely important. Not only was he an active figure in community development with a strong political voice, he was also an icon that represented South African arts and the strengths of our talents, and brought South African arts onto the world stage with energy and longevity that's yet to be matched. That's incredibly important when you consider that Africa only owns 1% of the creative economy, only 1% when the continent is bursting with natural creative talent in music, arts, fashion, and industry. So it's for this very reason that we as the US-based youth and diaspora of South Africa need to continue and honor Hugh's legacy by providing a platform for our voices to be heard on the world stage. I'm extremely, extremely proud to be a part of a movement that is centralizing African narratives in New York City's creative industries, with my partners and friends, some of whom are here. And there's so many examples, and this is just scratching the surface of what we have done and what we are able to do in the future. So, to Martina, the youth of the South African diaspora, let's take note from those who have come before us, like Utahu and his trumpet, and let's continue to make noise. Let's change the South African narrative until it reflects true freedoms for all South Africans. Let's listen to our elders and their wisdom, while still challenging them to see the world the way that we have been privileged to see as born frees. Let's be radical creators. And let's never ever stop fighting for social, economic, and artistic freedom. Thank you.
The youth is all right. They call them born frees, which means the generation that was born free. Thank you, Smalale. Next up, we have the Harlem Dance Leadership Program. Founded by Marie Brooks and her daughter, Francois Brooks, the Harlem Dance Leadership Program is the residence at Harlem Hospital. Please welcome Harlem Dance Leadership Program.
Good evening, everyone. Can we get some more lights in the house, please? Thank you. Thank you again. My name is Miss Brooks, Miss Francoise Brooks. I'm the daughter of the late Marie Brooks. It gives me great pleasure for the girls to come out and one boy to give you a South African dance. About 12 years ago, I took the kids to, about 15 years ago, I took the kids to South Africa. They went to Soweto, Cape Town, Durban, and what we did, we learned the dances there, did a cultural exchange. And they learned a little VOZA. Yes. But when Mr. VOZA asked me to do this, I said, you don't have to ask twice. It gives me great pleasure to come back to my roots and to teach the children about history. A few of them, they're not today because they've graduated from the program, but they had the pleasure to meet Nelson Mandela. Yes. So again, I don't want to detain you, but real quick, we are the Harlem Hospital Leadership Program. We've been here for 28 years. I started the program 28 years ago. Our teachers today were once my students. Now their kids are in the program. We have about 3 generations. But it's such a pleasure. Then family, the mic. And we have classes here, right here in the auditorium, and we have a dance studio on the 2nd floor. They've traveled to numerous countries, to Senegal, South Africa, France, all over the Caribbean, Bahamas, Martinique, Guadeloupe, I can name them, Jamaica, and so forth. And this year in September, we're going to Ivory Coast. We started students with pre-dance, the pre-dance. Some of our older ones that are 12 and 13, they started with me when they were 3 years old. And they mainly grow up in the program. It is a leadership program because we help them. We use dance as a catalyst to get them into private schools on scholarships and off to colleges, different colleges. And then lastly, we help them in getting them a job. Yes. So I don't want to detain you, and we're going to start with one of the South African pieces from that they learned in Durban. Thank you again. Can you bow your heads for a second? Shoshaloza, Shoshaloza, Inekunkwala Simbela Sibomwe Zimbabwe. I had the pleasure, thank you, from Mr. Salilo. When I was a kid from Sarafina, he taught me as a little kid voice lessons, so thank you again. And I'm about transitional leadership, passing it on. Yes. So, Kosa Sikaleli Africa, Manapakapu Manaraya, Ivai Vitanya Zoyatu, Kusi Sikalele, Kusi Sikalela. Kosa sikaleli Africa. Choka, 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 choka. Ayo. Wozani madoda, wozasisizane, sibambisaneni, isikhathi sifikile. Wozani madoda, wozasisizane, sibambisaneni, isikhathi sifikile.
Simkatile, Tabo Beki, Kiuleto, Letu, Zani Madoda. Simkatile, Tabo Beki, Kiuleto, Letu, Zani Madoda.
Tanganani, Susanani, Bamisanani. Tanganani, Susanani, Bamisanani. Tanganani, Susanani, Bamisanani. Tanganani, Susanani, Bamisanani. Wozani madoda, wozasisizane, sibambisaneni, isikhathi sifikile. Wozani madoda, wozasisizane, sibambisaneni, isikhathi sifikile.
Simkatile, Tabo Beki, Kiuleto, Letu, Zani Madoda. Simkatile, Tabo Beki, Kiuleto, Letu, Zani Madoda.
Wozani madoda, wozasisizane, sibambisaneni, isikhathi sifikile. 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 Choka, 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 choka. Ayo. Sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile. Wemadoda, sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile. Wemadoda, sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile. Wemadoda, sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile, sikhathi sifikile. Wemadoda,
Wow, give it up for the Harlem Dance Leadership Program.
Music, please. Music. Set the music.
You know what I loved about that is that those are Harlemites, and they're going to grow up. Africa is not some mythical, faraway place. Africa is tangible to them. They hear the music, they dance the dance. Africa is in them. So thank you, Marie Brooks. Where are you, Marie? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, they're not done. Oops.
There's a train that comes from Namibia and Malawi. There's a train that comes from Zambia and Zimbabwe. There's a train that comes from Angola and Mozambique. From Lesotho, from Botswana, from Swaziland. From all the hinterlands of Southern and Central Africa. This train carries young and old African men who are conscripted to come and work on contract in the gold and mineral mines of Johannesburg and its surrounding metropoli. 16 hours or more a day for almost 2 days. Deep, deep, deep down in the belly of the earth, when they are digging and drilling for that shiny, mighty, evasive stone, or when they dish that mishmash food into their iron plates with the iron shovel. Or when they sit in their stinky, funky, filthy, flea-ridden barracks and hostels, they think about the loved ones they may never see again because they might already have been forcibly removed from where they last left them, or wantonly murdered in the dead of night by roving and marauding gangs of no particular origin. We are told. They think about their lands and their herds that were taken away from them with the gun and the bomb and the tear gas and the Gatling and the cannon. And when they hear that choo-choo train, a chucking and a pumping and a smoking and a pushing and a pumping, crying and a stamping and a chicken and a they always cuss and they curse the coal train that brought them to Johannesburg. What is this? Stimela, see hamanga malate, see la tana kuba, helele fangila tawa kuba, hey baby, what is this?
I'm so sorry. That was Francoise Brooks. Her mother was Marie. Sorry about that. Thank you so much to the Harlem Dance Leadership Program. Next up, we have a presentation by Olisi Malungu. Malunga. Coming up.
Ladies and gentlemen, Amanzo! Amanzo! It is a special honor for me to stand here today on behalf of the South African community in New York and surroundings to present this award to a very distinguished man. The man to whom we give this award today symbolizes for us in the South African community the perfection of our transformation coming from the different places and regions of South Africa over to these United States looking for better opportunities. On this day of Freedom Day, which marks the triumph of the struggle for Black South Africans over the racist regime of apartheid South Africa, it's a special honor to recognize a man who fought that fight using the pen as his sword. Tossing and turning, starting writings and dropping them and starting again and scratching until this very last minute I hand over my drafts to my wife saying, stop. You're not going to be able to capture the might and magnitude of this man. So just get up there on the podium and speak about him from your heart. But he's alive, so I don't want to make it into something of a somber situation, because it's not. The South African community here in New York wants to recognize a man who, in that transformation that he made, has in fact become part of the fabric of the community of Harlem. If you have a child that was born any time between 1995 and say 2005 in Harlem Hospital, that child's birth certificate, more likely than not, is going to have the signature of this South African man on it. My firstborn son's birth certificate has this man's signature in it because he was born in Harlem Hospital. So I call him and I say, Bab Matsiwane. Oh, I gave it away? And I say, what? Tell me this. How were you able to get into Wits University? People, Wits, what? Afrikaans for white, right? Now, this is Freedom Day celebration, and it's okay to talk about race here today. Especially if you're a South African. How did you get into Wits? Now, people that do footnotes will say to you, well, Wits is actually Witwatersrand. But when we're growing up and you are thinking, where am I going to go after high school? Wits was not the first place you thought of. And so, he says, it is a very pleasant, and his critics would say sometimes meandering way. He says, Well, it took a special set of circumstances. It was a time when going into those institutions of learning was something that was reserved for the very, in fact, for South Africa, you had to be in some type of a quota which had its own rungs within it based on whether you were colored or Indian or black to actually be able to ultimately find a place as a student at a university institution like VOZA University. But he did it We present this award to him today for his generosity to us, the South African community here in New York. Dr. Stephen Matsiwane.
As you were describing some of my trends as I traveled from Alexander Township to Harlem, I thought you were talking about someone else, but I recognized along the way he was talking about someone called Stephen Matsiwane. I was warned to be brief by my sister who invited me here, and I said, I've always known that brevity is the source of wit, and I'll try to be brief. I also reminded her that for me this is a triple header. The first header is that Freedom Day 1994 was acquired by people who virtually gave their lives so that we can talk about what they fought for. So it's a special day for me. The second also has to do with the life of Hugh Masekela, whose memory we are reminded of today. The third, however, though, is a more, for me, a more persuasive account of Harlem Hospital and the way I was received when I graduated from the University of the Witwatersrand. I was received here with cordiality, and I was received here and made Harlem Hospital the kind of refuge I escaped from the brutal forces that were part of the common process in South Africa. At least I had a home about which I can concentrate my future concentration and future activities. This is an endeavor that lasted 40 years. It was not 40 years of what you call peaceful existence. It was 40 years of accepting the resources that were available at Harlem Hospital at the time. We're going back 40 years. Harlem Hospital has just been affiliated with Columbia University. And the concept of medical service and academia, though, was an important issue that I wanted to grapple with at the time. There were several obstacles, though, as you can understand, someone coming from Alexander being confronted with what was a developed country, but in a community that lacked the kind of services that are sort of commonplace in other communities, though, such as Long Island, for an example. But I was born and raised in a small community, and I'll say something about Hugh Masekela because he was also raised in a small community. It's of interest that he left South Africa from England. For England, I didn't have the resources that he had, so I came to the United States literally via cargo ship because I couldn't afford anything. I asked for resources from my mother. My mother said, "You graduated from the Witwatersrand. You better start your practice now so we can receive some of the money that we spend on you." But I had a larger objective. And I have to admit, though, I give it to my mother because he understood, though, that I was determined to do what I wanted to do in terms of postgraduate education, and I couldn't do that in South Africa the way the educational system was structured. I was reminded several times that I was lucky to get into the University of the Witwatersrand. In some ways, that was correct, but I wanted to be something other than what was available for me. I knew then that I needed to go someplace, not very clear at the time, but that's also another story that can be told at some other time. That 40 years of experience at Harlem Hospital was 40 years of continuous and uninterrupted work. And I hope some of the administrators and physicians at Harlem Hospital are here to listen to this, because we have very few resources, but with those few resources we were able to establish what's known as the pap smear cytology colposcopy clinic. That program led to the reduction of death of women in this primary service area that extends from 110th Street in the south to about 150th Street in the north, where it merges with Presbyterian services. In this area, we'll be able to reduce the number of women who die of invasive cancer of the cervix through pap smear apposition. But we also established family planning centers that had neighborhood clinics according to the recommendations of David Dink's administration, that Harlem Hospital needed to take Harlem Hospital to the community. We established these clinics which were near where people lived, which was a concept that was important in medical care health services. Through that program of family planning, we now have fewer women who get pregnant and don't know it. They're called unplanned pregnancies, are very rare now. But even more importantly, the number of women who get pregnant and go to someone else who claims to be a pseudo-physician and performs an abortion on their kitchen table, the number of those women have been reduced, because I can tell you that that contributed significantly to women who died in that process. So I am glad to report to you that talking to physicians now, I understand that the number of people with illegally performed abortion is fewer. That's due largely to family planning centers all over this community. The story of our accomplishment, ladies and gentlemen, is a vast one, but I want us to focus on the fact that we're here primarily, though, to recognize that Freedom Day for us represents a program where the brutality of a South African government, though, virtually eliminated. And this was because of a program that was pioneered by anti-apartheid revolutionaries. And here I want to comment my brother Shange here, because he is kind of getting older, but I see his revolutionary spirit is still with him. Carry on, my brother, because we need you. And we need people who can speak and bring these to surface. I want to talk about Hugh Masekela. But I want to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, what Martin Luther King said several years ago, that the arc of democracy is a long one, but eventually points towards justice. We who are aware of justice implies cannot go asleep, because the tendency to remove even the little that we've got is out there and getting stronger as day as so eloquently demonstrated by my brother Shange. Hugh Masekela has left us, but his memory endures. His contributions to music and the struggle of our people for justice will be with us. I was impressed by the number of performers here who reminded us of the pervasive story of sentiment that evoked by Hugh's music. You, son of the African soil, you have gone the distance. You have met your commitments, and you've reached the goal. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that as we mourn the significant loss, let's remember the story told by Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis. Those of you who are a little advanced in age, you will remember this great pair, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. If today is ours, let's live it. If love is strong, let's give it. If a song can help, let's sing it. If the world is wrong, let's right it. But if faith is asleep, let's wake it. Hugh's life was full of zest, enthusiasm, and music, and it was a life worth living. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you very, very much. And as I said when we started our program, we've got a lot of big wigs in the room. We are now joined, Please welcome Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer for a special presentation.
I'm Gail Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, and I'm honored to be here with Athena Moore, who is Director of our office in Harlem, and it's a very special day. Thank you very much. I don't have my glasses, so she's going to read the proclamation.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here with the Honorable Gail Brewer to present this proclamation. We ask that VOZA Rivers and also the Hughes Masekela Foundation join us to receive this proclamation. We are proud to acknowledge those organizations and individuals that have remained committed to improving our city and vibrantly enriching the community. And whereas the late Hugh Masekela, an activist, singer, and trumpeter hailing from South Africa, he was a pioneer of South African jazz with the Jazz Epistles. He made an impact on the anti-apartheid movement by continuing to perform after the government had banned public gatherings of more than 10 Black people, battling for rights with every note. And whereas after leaving South Africa, Mr. Masekela continued to influence those around him through his music, singing of the resistance to oppression, which led others to say his voice was both that of a storyteller and the croon of a folk singer. And whereas Mr. Masekela used more than his voice and trumpet as weapons against oppression by founding the Botswana International School of Music in 1986,
a nonprofit organization to educate young African musicians, which in turn help them gather and build strength inside and out. And whereas for his righteous rebellion against apartheid and his achievements, Mr. Masekela was awarded the Order of Ikhamanga in gold, which is South Africa's highest medal of honor. And each year, the Hugh Masekela Heritage Festival reminds others of the value of South African heritage and culture. Now, therefore, this highly esteemed woman standing next to me, Honorable Gail Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, do hereby commend Hugh Masekela for his contributions to the city, and his legacy, his honor, his memory will always be remembered by proclaiming Saturday, April 28, 2018, the Hugh Masekela Appreciation Day in the borough of Manhattan.
I still don't, I wouldn't know what to say, because I don't know I was just dreaming. Yeah. I don't know what today, I mean, I'm just stuck. But I do want to say that this is just a complete surprise. I don't even know, I just want to say thank you very, very much. You know, you just, when you get a presentation like this, you search your heart. You say, what is it? What did I do here? But I am very, very grateful. It's a very, very high honor, especially from the borough of Pune. Thank you very, very much.
And here we are, Hugh Masekela Appreciation Day. Many of you have received this pamphlet for the Hugh Masekela Foundation. The Hugh Masekela Heritage Foundation exists to preserve and promote African heritage and to contribute to the restoration of African identity through the creation of cultural information facilities, the support and incubation of heritage arts, and the dissemination of this information and cultural inheritance throughout the African diaspora and the world. We ask that you support the Hugh Masekela Heritage Foundation in any way that you can. Word of mouth is a beginning. And before we move on, we just want to take a quick look at Bra Hugh's life. Please be patient with us. We are working on the sound. In the meantime, whoop, whoop! Can I hear it back? I'm the woo, woo. Now you know that's not how a train goes. Woo, woo. Please bear with us. And as mentioned before, Brahu did attend Manhattan Music. Lord have mercy! Manhattan School of Music. Please welcome the Manhattan School of Music Quartet. so much to the Manhattan School of Music Quartet. Next up, we have such a gifted musician amongst us who now he's returned to New York or New Jersey after a long time back home in South Africa, but he's back, he's with us, Jimmy Mbwandi, and Jimmy is a very well-established musician on both continents. He's worked with the likes of Brahu and also worked with Miriam Makeba, and any South African musician you can think of, he has worked with. So please welcome Jimmy Mbwandi's quartet.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to introduce a young man. His name is Linda Sikakani. With Kenyatte Bisley. Yayoi Ikawa on piano. She's Orete Tinini on drums. Just before I start, I'd just like to say it's a privilege to be here tonight and you celebrating this evening with us as a South African musician, and having so much people coming through and celebrating the most. It's very. I'm sorry. Anyway, Linda Skakane, he came from South Africa and he won the South African Musicians' Rights Organization scholarship, and he's actually studying at the New School, and he's supposed to go back to the New School next semester to do his last program. Now, because of the, sometimes it's very difficult if you are in a private school as a young kid from Africa to sustain anything. So, because he won his scholarship in South Africa and is here, it shouldn't be that difficult for him to continue his education. Now, he will be going back. So we're trying the best we can to talk about things like this a little bit because they're important to us. And now, I would like to do a song that I did with Brahu Masekela and Abdul Ibrahim. So it's gonna feature Linda and the trumpet. I don't see you guys. Usually I'm at the back, I'm behind, and they're in the front. So I'm always looking for them like this. I like it when they're here, but tonight is different. So we're gonna have some. Okay, I'm gonna do a song that I did with Abdul and Brahu. Hopefully.
the most beautiful ladies and ladies to see you all. Mrs. Tokuna Zameni. It's